Hello, everyone. It's so good to see all of you. I'm so glad that you're all here. Hi, John. Hey, Double Rainbows. Hi, Raggedy Susan. Hey, Maria, Olivia, Rosewood. Hey, Michelle. So good to see all of you guys. I've missed you all. Hi, CJK. Hey, Lynn. Thank you, guys. So this is what's going to happen. I wanted to come in and say hello to all of you, but I'm still really recuperating and recovering. So I'm not going to be with you tonight. I probably won't be with you for a couple more nights. I am feeling better. Thank you all for all of your prayers, the kind comments, the wonderful emails that you all have sent to me. You have no idea how much that meant to me, especially when I was in the hospital in intensive care. My daughter was reading to me some of the things that you guys were saying, and it just made me feel so loved and cared for. And I really appreciate all of you. Hey, Derek, Rosewood, I'm so glad that you got it. Thank you. That's awesome. So I hope you guys enjoy your evening with Steve from True Crime Web. He's going to be my guest host over the next few shows, and he is amazing. And so I just want you guys to always show him the same amount of respect that you show me, and I know that you will, because I know that you all love him. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Steve on and say goodnight to all of you. I will be back just as soon as I possibly can. Good night, everyone.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. Hey, Kristen. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing okay. I'm going to leave my fans in your good hands.
Thank you. I'll try to do you proper.
You will. I have no doubt about it. Good night, everyone.
All righty. What an impressive woman. I became aware of her a few months ago, subscribed and been a supporter of her ever since. And she is absolutely one of the most perceptive persons, or regardless male or female, I've ever listened speak. That when she covers some of these topics that she covers, and as she reads through the stories and she presents the cases, it's quite amazing of some of the things that she picks up on, even on especially the Delphi case that I've looked at, and I've seen it from her perspective, and I thought, that's pretty intuitive there. That is very impressive. So I'm fortunate enough in my life to be able to consider her a friend. And when I offered that if there was anything I could do to help her, once I found out that she was better, we were so worried about her that being the intuitive person she is, she knew instantly of how that we could move this and help with her community and talk about certain topics, that she still has a strong interest and desire that the Delphi case is worked on. And I find it an honor that she allows me to stand up here for a few moments with her community and try to fill those shoes, which I can't. And I have big feet, but I'll never be able to fill her feet. And I'll just have to bear with me tonight as we progress with, I try to do her justice of what she would have brought to the table tonight. And I look forward to her when she does get back fully well. And she deserves all our support and everything that we can do for her. But with that being said, we're going to be talking a little bit tonight. One of the topics she wanted me to speak about is from the law enforcement perspective of evidence. And what, there was a lot of debate about the Wabash River in Peru. Was it related to the Delphi case? Was it a training exercise? And, I did pretty deep dive into looking and trying to figure out through all the law enforcement training manuals, and I could never find anything that was scheduled during that time frame or for that long. In law enforcement, we never trained that long, that in one area and one different type of recovery systems or searches. I mean, we have a lot of different types of courses and classes for recovery of evidence, because there's nothing more important to a case than gathering the evidence that is going to make a prosecution of an offender and make it whereas that they go down for exactly what they committed, for the crime they committed. And so it takes a lot of detail and a lot of information and a lot of training to be able to bring that to the table, that when you get this one shot in front of that jury, that you have collected that evidence, you have taken all the steps necessary so that when you go in there and you present this to that jury and you are attacked by by the defense attorneys, because it's not just a one-way street that what the state says goes. These individuals in our court systems are guaranteed a trial, whereas both sides can present a story, and whatever the evidence goes to, the juries decide upon. And so when we started looking at the Wabash, and it got to the point of whatever information led law enforcement, if it's related to Delphi, which I believe is related to Delphi, that led them there had to be something so significant that they would employ the manpower, the man hours for weeks on end, not just 1 day, 2 days. I mean, several weeks. And then they close down. And when they close down, they walk away. And where are we now? And it opens up a window of discussion that we really don't know where it's headed, what information they gathered, what evidence they found. We can speculate about some of the items they might have been looking for. And that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to possibly look at what information was provided, who it was provided by, and we'll get into some of the cellmate information that runs right parallel from DNR to what the murder sheets information was, of the connection to the Wabash River, what possibly may be in that river. And then we have to look at that, in any metropolitan area, regardless of the size of it, that if you have a bridge and you have water, undoubtedly somebody's going to dispose or try to dispose of evidence in that area. And it's always been that way and always will be that way, that people have a lot of confidence in how destructive water can be to evidence. And is that true? Yes, most part. That a lot of times they're never found. Were they able to find something on this case? I hope so. Are there some indicators they did? You know, they shut down after 5 weeks. Is there a reason for that? There was different color flags that was in the later part of the search. They went downstream to a certain area that in the trials and the control testing I did showed that would be the area for certain types of instruments or devices to be several hundred feet downstream. And they were in that area, and there was some flags that showed that possibly could be a certain type of evidence they might have been looking for. So all the parameters from the controls that I ran fell right in line, because you wouldn't expect a heavy object such as a heavy knife, or if that's one of the items they were looking for, to be that far downstream. And so they searched right there at the river for quite a while. And then as they moved further down, then you're looking for certain other types of evidence that might be. Is that an electronic device? And so we'll look at some of those things that if they found a certain type of evidence, how could that be linked to a crime scene such as in Delphi, 30-something miles away? And why would they do that? Does it make a lot of sense that the persons that are involved in the Delphi murders or suspected of being involved in the murders would dispose of certain things that close to their home? Criminals, it's not something that you say, well, nobody's that dumb. Well, certain criminals are that dumb that they will do some stupid things. And so we're going to look at some of those things. Now, if they're looking for, let's say if they got some information from whatever source they got it, doesn't have to be Kagan. It could be a second generation or third generation. It could be from a call-in tip that someone may have been in that area and may have been magnet fishing and found something at a time past. There's so many different ways that could initiate this search on the river, and so much information that could have initiated certain movements within the jail and in interrogations, or certain movements by a grand jury, and adding pressure on to individuals that someone finally broke and said, this is the information I got, and this is where it is, and this is how I know it's true. Because certain offenders, if they offered the information, say that Kagan offered the information that, hey, my trial's coming up and I can tell you everything that happened. Well, being dealt the hand that Kagan is offering you information and offering you a sweet deal comes with a lot of baggage. And so law enforcement would have to make up that baggage and verify that, okay, just because you say it's so, because good, trustworthy individuals, law enforcement can put a lot of weight to their testimony. But when you're dealing with a habitual liar that has lived in a fantasy world his whole life, has catfished women and children, especially children, that it's on his devices, the searches are on his devices, and he has one purpose in life. And he has said that he never spoke to a female that he didn't want a nude picture of. So, I mean, we're talking about an animal there that lives in a fantasy world and is a predator. So if that was the basis of the information to start the search of the river, he would have had to provide additional information. He would have probably had to pass some polygraphs. He would have had to describe something that law enforcement has held close to their chest for 5.5 years. And so either he had to give a description of a certain type of weapon that was used, that had certain characteristics about it that no one else knew, and that would have left certain tool marks at the crime scene in Delphi. And so when you have that type of supportive evidence, then that might have moved the scale that we are going to have to put as much manpower into searching this river as possible. And so that's what we want to do. And we'll be getting into some of the questions here. Let me go up through here and see what we got before I get too far away from that. All right, let me go down through here. Y'all have to bear with me. I'm not as good at this as Christian is. She is amazing how quickly she can do this. And I'm not, as you see, I've got Mrs. Steve to help me quite a bit. Thank goodness. And just go scan through here before I go on further. Let's see. Thank you. Yeah, everybody so supportive of that she's feeling so much better. And I'm absolutely glad that she is. Because I often at the end of my show, I come over here, just finish my coffee off and relax. It's so much, it's such great how she presents information. Okay. I'm getting down here where we can start again. Okay. True Crime Maria, $5. Thank you so much for guest hosting tonight, Steve. Always the well wishes of healing for Chris. Absolutely. It's an honor to be here, and thank you for supporting her. And we appreciate everything that you do for her channel. Absolutely. And if I miss, like I said, I'm not as fluent with everything and doing this as well as she is, but I'm going to give it my best shot, people. All right. And the mods out there, y'all do phenomenal work. Let's see here. We're getting down through here. We count on criminals being dumb. Absolutely, John. And they are. The world's full of them. But unfortunately, there's some out there that's pretty intelligent also. Okay, how would law enforcement separate DNA found at the crime scene? I am assuming the girls had DNA on them from the Patty's house, etc. And that's a legitimate and great question. They would go in and they, of course, if they can develop a DNA profile, they're going to search until they identify the source of that DNA profile. That DNA profile is going to come back one of two things: identifiable or unidentifiable. And is it human, animal, or is it even, there's a lot of DNA out there, that even in vegetation, that you can link to a crime scene. So there's more than just animal, and there's a very unique type of vegetation in certain areas that you can track back on. So there's a lot of stuff out there that they can search on. But that's what they do. They either identify it, and if it's unidentifiable, that we haven't identified a person of interest that's within a household or anyone that they possibly could have been cross-contamination with, and then they put it in the file of this is a suspect or person of interest profile that we're looking for. I don't think we have from reading what they have and where we're at currently, the information we have is they don't have one that will absolutely lead to a suspect. So hopefully science catches up to that shortly. All right. Let's see. Thank you, Dave. I'm trying. And let's see here. We're getting on through here. I'll get caught up here in just a second. Thank you, Teresita. I appreciate you doing here. All right. I need all the support I can get. Okay. All right. So if they're looking for certain types of evidence, and the knife is something that if is found in there, that knives are, you wouldn't think that they would be identifiable as far as wound characteristics and tool marks. They are. Every type of knife that if it's used in a crime, from the point that if it's used against the human body, it's going to leave certain indicators. It may be how long the knife blade is, the thickness of the blade, how wide, and if the direction and the wound channel. Because if it hits a bone and it deflects off the bone, that tells you something about the characteristics of the knife. And so there's so much that you can tell from it. And from the hilt that, are the guards that are on a knife to keep an individual from cutting themselves, that they can leave characteristics. It may not always be on flesh, but if you took a stained, blood-soaked knife that had certain guards on it, and it made contact with skin or cloth or clothing, that you might be able to identify that. And so that's what law enforcement would be looking at. Is there anything that tells you what this knife looks like outside of the hilt? The scabbard. That what does it look like? And so if they can identify it and they make note of it, then if someone comes along and says, hey, I can tell you what that knife looks like, or you put that knife in a lineup. Lineups can be used for a lot of things, and even for weapon identification. That as long as you have a lot of different type of things, it's not just for suspects, but you could do it for a weapon too. And that individual is able to pick that instrument out, then that's something that law enforcement would use. And then when we look at, was the device in the river possibly a phone or some other type of electronic device? And one of my co-creators sent me some information about a cell phone that was recovered after it been, I think it was True Crime with Shannon sent it to me, about a cell phone that had been recovered from a water environment that had been there for 5 years. And they were able to clean it up and retrieve some data. And you think about it, that all the major airlines, and when they have air crashes and it's in the deepest regions of the ocean and they're able to recover those black boxes, that they're able, as long as they keep them wet, and there's certain processes that the technicians will use in the lab to recover that data. So if it works, and some of these crashes are down there and for long periods, and there's processes for salt water, then you would think that there would be processes for fresh water that wouldn't be as detrimental or destructive to some of these electronic devices. And so you may have a knife over the bridge. You may have different instruments. You may have different weapons. You may have hammers. You may have tire irons. I know there was a tire iron found from that, because I can't remember which creators had the picture of one of the officers holding up a tire iron, or even memory cards. Now, finding a memory card, I don't think would it possible, but I would think it was probably highly improbable that they would find something that small. But knives, weapons, guns, all of that, and how many of them did they find at the Peru Wabash River search? Because there would have been other crimes committed where other offenders crossing that bridge would have, dumped stuff. And so what would be the nightmare is that you're looking there and you've got 4 or 5 cell phones and you don't know which one's connected. And so you would have to go in, collect the information. Was the information given by whoever provided that information for the search, that we're looking for a certain model phone, certain time frame? And so that would be helpful, that if they do have that and they'd only recovered one type of cell phone that meets and is within the parameters of what has been reported by whoever their source of information is. That would be very critical information. And if it's within the same timeline that it existed and could be that phone, then that's what might be some of the supportive evidence. And I hope they found everything, that whatever the tips led, I hope they found it all, and that's in the lab now, and we're just waiting on reports. It's out of the hands of the creators and everyone now. It's totally within the hands of law enforcement and the people that's in those labs. And, they're there for a reason. They have the proper training. They understand how to retrieve this information and handle it. Hopefully, not always. I've seen some people that, I worked with some people that I thought were properly trained, and then see them do some silly things. And I've made mistakes too. We're all humans. We all make mistakes, and it's frustrating sometimes because you only get one shot at this stuff. That when you have that piece of evidence, it's it's hard to destroy a knife, but I wouldn't, working with these electronics and taking the measures to make sure that you don't lose any of the memory, or you handle it with the best practice and the best known methods to retrieve data. I'm sure they have certain guidelines, which is well above my pay grade. I can barely turn a computer on, let alone try to. And that's one of the things that they teach us in law enforcement, that if we ever go in to collect a electronic device, we don't hit buttons. We don't do anything to it. You just if it's able to shut down instantly, that's all you do. Or even that, or just unplug it, power it down, whatever. But there's manuals out there. The most current manuals I haven't kept up with years, because that was something that was coming around. When I first started, we didn't have computer systems. Some of the larger metropolitan areas did, but our agency didn't. That came along later. And once we got into it, and then it took over the world, and everyone has it now. But they would have had certain measures and ways of looking at that evidence, because once they collect it, they have to, at the river, if you're saying that we're going in this river, we're looking for a knife, every knife that they found, they have to document it. And documenting that knife isn't just saying, hey, I found a knife over here, and then you find another knife 50 feet somewhere else. You have to show that location. You have to document it, triangulate it, measure it, baseline it. How with modern technology, 3D imaging, that they have so many options of how they would have marked these flags. And there was a lot of poles in that river. What did each of those poles in that river represent? I have no idea. But if you counted the number of poles, they found a significant amount of different things, or found areas of interest. And so they have to document those areas of interest, so that when, whoever's running that either sonar or any type of device, that, metal detector, whenever it would ping and they mark it, then it's almost like an archaeological dig, that we have to come up here, we mark the spot, and we have to find what's there and not rush to it. So it's a long process. It's not just, oh, here's something, let's start throwing rocks and stuff. It's not expected. At one time, that would have been fine many, many years ago. But now that we have CSI and we have all this TV stuff, we have an understanding, and our juries have a belief that it has to be a certain way. And it's pretty accurate that it should be a certain way. It should be at the highest standards of training and law enforcement presentation and preservation that we handle these crime scenes, because you do have a crime scene somewhere else, and now you have a disposal site of something that might be linked to that crime scene. And so that disposal site has to be handled just as thoroughly as what the main crime scene was, so that when you find that one piece of evidence and you collect it, that when you present it to that jury and you do it in a professional manner, it takes all ability of the defense to say that, oh, you placed that knife there. It's a conspiracy, or, y'all are against my client. You created and you planted evidence. And so it has to be done in a certain way that we take that away from the defense, that they can't accuse law enforcement of creating and false evidence against an individual that is being sought for a specific crime. So there's a large amount of responsibility on these searchers, and it takes a long time. Like I said, just because you find something doesn't mean that you can start flipping, throwing stuff, and there's certain processes you have to go through. And when you do find something, you have to identify it, have to mark it, have to document it, have to photograph it, and go through that process for each and every item in that river that you found. And I'm absolutely impressed by how long they stayed in that river. And I can understand why it would take 5 weeks, that you can't do what is necessary to satisfy the court in one day. Could they have went across there and lined up people and flipped rocks with metal detectors and sonar and stuff? Absolutely. But when you went to a jury and they say, well, how many knives did you find? I found 10 knives. Where'd you find them? In the river. It has to be better than that. Juries expect better than that. And so we have to do it better than that. All right, let me catch back up here with let's see if we got anything else going on here. All right. Let's see here. Like I said, I'm not as good as this as she is. Thank for the mods, because if I was having to do what the mods are doing right now, when these trolls show up, we'd be in a nightmare. All right. Let's see here. Reddit. Let's see. Trying to see if I got any more questions. I saw 1 or 2 questions, so we'll look at them right quick. Oh, don't worry about hitting the like button for me. Hit the like button for Kristen, because she deserves all the support, all the likes that we can get her, and any way you can, from the views to sharing. Let's do this to show her our support for her, because she deserves it so much. It says, is Doug Carter still the lead man for the Delphi case? You know, the lead agency, and I'm sure Carter would tell you, is going to be Carroll County, and where Delphi is located at. And when news breaks, more than likely, I would expect that if they gather in Delphi, or they gather at the main location for that, that's where you'll know it's something big coming for that. And when they gather all the agencies together, and hopefully that will come soon. But Carter is the lead, highest ranking for the Indiana State Police. But as far as being the main man over this investigation, his supporting role, I believe he probably is, but they would probably always default that Carroll County is the lead agency. Hello, Unsolved Crimes Uncovered. Good to see you tonight, Allie. Beginning of chain of custody, I'm guessing. That you're correct, because that chain of custody, it has to be maintained from the moment that's found, or even before it's found, that if something occurred and a certain ping on a metal detector, then yes, that's when it starts. Okay. Let's see. Molly says, every time she sees DNR, I think of do not resuscitate. I think of Department of Natural Resources every time I see DNR. That's where it's here in Georgia DNR. So yeah, DNR could have a lot of meanings. All right, Steve, do you think the advancement of tech and CSI and make it much harder for a circumstantial evidence case to be prosecuted? No, I think if the science exists and we have the opportunity to use that absolutely ensures that we're not going to get and prosecute the wrong individual, then that's what is necessary. It doesn't matter. We have seen throughout history so many innocent people that are sent to prison and their lives and families are destroyed. And it was just on an eyewitness that years later says, or recants their story and says, no, I was mistaken, and DNA proves it. So whatever the sciences are and whatever CSI is out there that's based on truth, whatever those standards are, that's what we should do. We should strive for that. Will that always be what a jury should have to consider. They should be able to consider everything that, if it was done at the highest standard and expectations, and it satisfied the minds of the jury of everything that could be presented, then I have no problem with it. But you see some of these half-baked prosecutions sometimes, and it just absolutely, these families have been destroyed due to being falsely accused and falsely convicted. So, I understand both sides. Let's see here. Trying to get through here. Never silent. We do it because we family. That's absolutely correct. Ramona, thank you. Hey, it's an honor being here. Thank you for the support. Let's see here. Hey, True Crime with Sunshine. She's here. Excellent. See some old friends. Good. All right. So now we'll get into some of those. Let me give me a sip of coffee here. Let's see. So, all right. So we talked about some of the court systems and what they expect and what evidence may be in there. In my personal opinion, I think it's that if it's linked to Delphi, it has to be the weapon, and it has to be some type of, I would believe, cell phone. And those are the items I'm betting on. Could it be other things? Sure. I could be absolutely wrong. Hope not. I'm hoping that they had some good information. They were able to support it. And that's where we're at right now. And because it's 5.5 years, and, law enforcement, they want those end results. I know that were mistakes made during the investigations. I'm absolutely positive there were. I've been part of in cases where mistakes were made. You try to minimize them, but and you try to minimize the destruction of evidence, but it does occur sometimes that one wrong move may lose that avenue. I've been processing fingerprints and see that fingerprint sitting there, and rather than photograph it before I try to lift it, I try to lift it and then it's gone. And I had a print I could have photographed. But you learn through these things sometimes, and mistakes are made, and you just own up to them, put them in the book, and never make that mistake again. All right. So now let's talk about DNR a little bit. Man, I didn't see the original in some of these shows of what was brought out. So from what I've researched I had of it, because when I first saw the Cellmate stuff, and when you're trying to get that, you're getting a second generation story. You're getting information about a convict from a convict. And how convoluted can that be? Jailhouse, rats, informants, confidential information, whatever, how you want to label it. You're getting it from another individual that's serving time for whatever types of crimes that he's committed and whatever types of lies that he's told in his lifetime. And he's on probation and parole. And is he working on a sweet deal himself? What is his, because everyone has an agenda. In jail, everyone has an agenda. They're there, they're working, when they're on the streets, they're working their angle. When they're in jail, they're working that angle. And so you're dealing with the worst of the worst. And when that first came out, I didn't pay a lot of attention to this DNR information. And then when Kristen asked me to focus on this, I went back and I said, okay. So I dove into it. Some of the, I believe some of the streams have been taken down, or the videos have been removed. But I found some interesting information from what I found, and some of the key points that were said. and I've seen some of the information presented by other creators. But like I said, I didn't get to see the first generation interviews. I've seen all the later ones. So with that being said, we'll go into some of the breakdowns of, as I took notes, as I watched various creators creating their information with their perspective and their narrative, and what does it mean. So whenever I say something with this DNR thing, I'm looking at it from the perspective of law enforcement, of how we as a law enforcement officer, that if you came to us and you give us a bit of information as a jailhouse informant, and that, how do we weigh it? What supporting evidence do we need? Because we're trying to support statements that you say came from another individual that you say has confessed to you certain things. Where and how and why? What is your agenda of bringing that information forward? Is it for your 20 seconds of fame? Is it for someone's paying you money to do so? Is it for that you're trying to work an angle to get a lighter sentence? Or are you telling the truth? But you're dealing with people that are that have lied and have been convicted of criminal offenses. So it's, law enforcement is dealt a terrible hand when you're dealing with these criminals that are turning on other criminals for whatever their agenda is. So we'll go from there. But anyway, this DNR confession that he says that Kagan confessed certain information to him. And it is fascinating. I mean, if you just looked at it and listened to it, it's something like from the movies, because there's certain things that they say that are outrageous. But sometimes information that is so outrageous, there could be a bit of truth in it. And there usually is a bit of truth in all lies. That's what makes a lie believable. There's a certain amount of truth in it that we as an individual, we want to believe it. And that's the thing with the Delphi murders. When someone says that somebody was involved, we want the case solved so bad that we will jump to a conclusion that this is the truth. Could it be the truth? Absolutely. Is it the truth? Without supporting evidence, even if it is the truth, it means nothing. And that's the nightmare that law enforcement has to look at and has to weigh this information. The public at general, of course, they can jump to any conclusion they want to, and it means absolutely nothing in a court of law. That opinion will never be allowed. You're not an expert to offer an opinion. Law enforcement, it's a high standard for anyone in a courtroom to be able to say, this is my opinion, and the jury gives it full weight. For the fact that the judge has to say that this is an expert, his opinions matter. His opinion carries just as much weight as any other type of evidence, physical evidence, testimony, that just his opinion carries the same amount of weight, which is a high standard and high bar. And it can be achieved. I was an expert witness in a federal court on a certain case one time, but it takes a high standard. And so you have to look at it for that and for what it is. And so when law enforcement's looking at it and they're trying to figure out what supporting evidence they have from DNR. DNR says that during the confession that Kagan says Tony was in contact, he was the person also using the Anthony Shots account. Is that true? I have no idea. If you believe DNR, yes. If you look at the transcripts, is there some supporting evidence that says that there's another person that was communicating on that device? yes, because when they look at it and they address that issue with Tony during the transcripts, and they ask him questions, that we know there's two verbal, there's two people with different types of verbal messaging being written or texts, and they're being used. We know it's more than one person. And so did DNR, has he seen the transcripts? When did he go to jail? Has he seen the transcripts? Did he know this bit of information? And he's creating a story. And that's what law enforcement has to look at. This is something that's common knowledge. So, and did DNR have that information? So that's something that you wouldn't be able to say that, oh, this is something only DNR would know. It's not. Unfortunately, those transcripts were released, and we begin to see the impact of what murder sheets did by releasing the information, because it's taken out a whole segment that if those transcripts had never been released, and now we have DNR saying there's a second person that Kagan says was using that. That might be some powerful information. Not now, because the whole world knows about it. And I was, back when it first came out, and you don't always realize how detrimental some of the information that can be released can have in later time frames. And so now we're starting to see that it does take some of the clout of DNR away, that just because he says another person, we've lost that ability now. Then you have to look at that, jailhouse artist, the artwork that he was doing, trading, and Kagan was signing and having his own little art shows and able to trade and work the market that's within a jail. Is that true? Yes. There's some very talented people in jail, very artistic, that do artwork. And some of the details and some of the perks about immunity offered, which is something that Kagan may have said, and has it been offered to him? The only people that would be able to give any that is supportive evidence would be in law enforcement. And if the DA has offered, or federal prosecutor, whoever has been in contact, because it's not just a regular law enforcement officer. It's not an FBI agent that says, we're going to give you immunity. It doesn't work that way. It takes a person within the court, officer statutes, of having the ability to offer that gives it any meaning and any weight. And so is that information that law enforcement could say, oh, he's telling the truth on that part because we did offer him immunity. But it also would be the same that, well, no, we never offered him immunity. So that would be a guideline for law enforcement to say, yes, he did talk to Kagan, yes or no. Is Kagan in the 600 block? I don't know. If that's true, that could be some supporting evidence. He says that he was with Tony when they traveled to Delphi, and that they were in a certain vehicle. Was that information that was known prior to? And that's another part of what the murder sheets has done. They've taken away that avenue that if DNR came out with this without the knowledge of that Jeep information being out there, that would have been some information that law enforcement only would have known. Is it detrimental to the case now? Yes. So once again, we look at that from some of this YouTube stuff and creators, that when you release certain information, that you say law enforcement, we checked with it and they said they could release it, that it's okay to release it. Okay. Now we're talking about a law enforcement officer that you are getting this information from. Who is this law enforcement officer that has decided that this is information you can release? I'd say, I think it's a fair question for murder sheets to say, who is the public relation officer And who is the DA or the prosecuting attorney in law enforcement that says it's okay to do this? Because we're starting to see the harm from just what DNR, that DNR can have, this is common knowledge now. It's not something that just Kagan could told you and no one else knew, because it was within the files of what law enforcement has. But now they've made it public knowledge. And so now we lose that supporting evidence. But, and they talk about a third person there that was also helpful in staging this information. As far as I know, I don't know if that's ever been released, but from here on out, by what they've done with DNR, that every time you bring out certain things like this, it can be held that it is detrimental to the case from this point forward. All right, let's go down through here and see if I can find anything that needs to be looked at right quick. All right. Y'all just have to bear with me as I process through my thoughts here. Okay. Trying to catch up on any questions here. True Crime Maria, thank you. I appreciate it. I hope I'm trying to do the best I can. Kristen, she is so much better at this than I. Thank you, Michelle Nicholas, for your super sticker. And if I missed others, it's because I'm in my thought process. And like I say, I'm not as smooth as some people with this stuff. Let's see here. All right. All right. It says, see through here, it says, Steve, if law enforcement had a suspect that they were watching 24/7, but not enough for an arrest, what would they do if they tried to flee town? They can leave. I mean, there's nothing unless it's at the point, and if you putting enough surveillance on him 24/7, and they would have an understanding of operational awareness that if certain things occur and he packs up, he changes his identity, he dyes his hair, he shaves his head, he creates a false persona, and he leaves, does the prosecutor say arrest him? Because at that point we have that he is taking flight. Is that the one thing that will tip the scale? That'll be up to each prosecutor to say that if this occurs, arrest him. If it doesn't occur, or if they say, well, there's nothing we can do, then of course it doesn't matter. But if they have him under 24/7 surveillance, it's for one or two things: either to curb his ability to continue his criminal activities, or that if he does attempt to take flight, we're going to arrest him. I think on Scott Peterson case, that's what they did. It was getting to the point that, yes, we might lose control of him, so we have to make an arrest. And so does that occur? Absolutely. All right. Let's see here. Let's see. We're getting there. Oh yeah, I saw where the about his questions about where the signature is verified, not a perfect science. Where if you're talking about where Kagan may have signed the artwork and trading it for certain things in the jail market. Did he sign those? Is possible, or was someone else in the jail that was doing artwork, creating his own signature and saying, "Hey, this is Kagan," and and doing a fraud forgery business inside the jail to trade, because how do you verify within inmates in there? So there's a lot of different possibilities of the notoriety of what Kagan could do and who else is in there, because you're dealing with criminals that whatever angle they got, that they'll do it. They don't care. It's nothing to them to take money away from another criminal. Crime harassment garden, ISP in local jurisdictions. I couldn't ask earlier, in your experience, how have local jurisdictions responded to state collaboration? We never had an issue with most of the agencies, especially with the GBI. We worked some with FBI, but normally it was GBI. FBI, of course, was federal crimes and bank robberies and things. But the GBI was always, they were supporting, they have the state crime labs. They have the people that are in training for that. And then, of course, they had regional GBI agents that were always scattered around so that they could respond to all the major cases from the get-go, so they'd have that information and able to support us if we needed some additional resources. And so usually it's quite friendly working, and everyone works in their lane and for the common cause of getting predators off the street. So my experience overall has always been good. Did I see sometimes that I wish certain individuals didn't feel or try to make a power move? Yes, but that's easily handled. You go to your chain of command and they'll handle it and fix it for you. I wonder if it's possible that the lost marathon gas station video is not really lost. Maybe LA is just keeping it from the public. That's a good point. It's possible that some people think it is or it's not. And has it been recovered or was it recopied over? Who knows? But that's a fair point. We don't know. Let's see. Collab, maybe oversight or directions. Let's see here. All right. Okay. Let's see. We're getting caught. I'm trying to keep status up here. Let's see where we were at. Okay. Then they talk about that the Anthony Shots account had the information about that that he used the Shots account to meet Libby. Once again, we go back and we weigh the information that the releasing of the transcripts allowed that to become common knowledge and is now detrimental to the case for the fact that this informant, this jailhouse informant, is no longer able to, we can't use it as supporting evidence that he knows something that no one should know. Everyone knows that someone else communicated and possibly from different addresses and to schedule a meeting. It's in the transcripts. And so the more I look at this, the more I get upset with the murder sheets and the releasing of the information. And on more levels than what I was before. I hadn't looked at it from this perspective, but once I saw what DNR did and realized what DNR was saying and how it could have been at one point, but we've lost all that value now. Let's see. Now we go over here. And there's the sketches part. Okay. Oh, yeah, and they had the hearing. Some of the supporting evidence that DNR presented that they had a hearing and they had paperwork of where he had his bracelet showing that he had contact with Kagan. All that is supporting evidence, trying to give credibility to the rest of DNR's statement and showing that he did have some contact. How much contact? We know he had at least. Did he get that bracelet first generation from Kagan? Or did he get it from another inmate? We don't know. Did he exchange artwork for it from another inmate? We don't know. But there was a hearing, and there's some paperwork showing that they decided that the jail rules, you're not allowed to have that bracelet. And so they took it from him, and he appealed it. But that's just being jail inmates. And there is a court system within the jail that it's absolutely... when I first started in law enforcement, inmates did one thing. They served time. Then it became that even within the jail system, from day-to-day operations, they had a way to appeal. And I thought that was the craziest thing I ever seen in my life. Still do. And Now, what if KK is just fantasizing about all this and making it up as it goes? And that's something that we don't know, because everything that's being said is common knowledge now. That nothing up to this point I've got that I've seen is anything that wasn't known. Now, we're about to get into some things that DNR says that may be something that wasn't included in the transcripts, but from this point on, it's common knowledge. And so this journalist that released this, he's placed himself in the same boat as what Murder Sheets did. That some of this information, now that it's common knowledge, will never be supportive evidence that only law enforcement knows. And so you have to be extremely careful. And these journalists that are doing this and trying to get whatever information they can and bring it to the table, that we're beginning to see that the fruits of their labors are poison. And sadly. All right, let's see here. It says that Tony is friends with Ron Logan. That is something that has been rumored that you've seen over the past. And is that a guess? We don't know. Is that something law enforcement knows? Is that really supporting evidence of a community with a limited number of people that travel that is well known, such as Ron Logan, and how well known was Tony on the racing and all the stuff that he did? Don't know. Has their paths crossed at similar taste or habits? Possible. We just don't know. But there's one part of this, like I said, is now public knowledge, and that in the future, that Kagan says that Tony came back and that he had walked the bridge, he accosted him, he had harmed him, and he came back to him and asked him for his help before leaving. Does law enforcement have information that shows someone leaving that crime scene, coming back to that crime scene with additional help? Very possible. Will it ever be able to be used again after this? No. So, but that could be supporting evidence that DNR and Kagan has said something that is supporting information that other people wouldn't have known. That the offender, the psychopath, the killer of these two innocent children left the scene and then came back. But does the time frame allow for that? That is the thing that throws it off. That if he made contact with Libby and Abby, took them to the crime scene, murdered them or incapacitated them and needed help, does the timeline allow, because we're only looking at a 45 to 30 minute window, that now he goes back to the vehicle, or does he make contact with the vehicle and the vehicle drives to the cemetery or drives somewhere closer and then comes down? And so we have to look at that what happened and what is the information, and is there information suggesting that? We don't know. But he says that he left, he came to us or came to him, wanted help, and so he had to go back and help, because he says that Kagan admitted that he helped dump and stage, which there is some supporting evidence that you look at it that no one else has ever said that, but there is some supporting evidence from the transcripts that says that Kagan was on site for the fact that he says that, or not that he says, but he looks up how long is DNA on a body, which would explain why he would do that search. That he wasn't there originally, but he had at some point been at that scene, or he may have been there originally. I mean, who knows? Only the people on the scene know. And so if law enforcement has information that there's more than one offender there, and Kagan says it's him and at least one other, maybe two, because we're confused if there's a third person there or not, it's been indicated. So we have the supporting evidence that from Kagan's searches, and is that supporting evidence of how long does DNA stay on body, which is unexplainable. Why in the world would you look up, of course, Kagan's got a story with that. Oh, of course you would. No, not in my book. You wouldn't. Of course, you have two neighbors that are killed in a town that you were talking to the morning of and had said that I tried to meet, and you created a false alibi during the time of their murder. And then you look up DNA. No, being on a body, I don't buy it. And so that explains it. And is that supporting evidence? I find it very condemning. And that Kagan says he disposed of items. And is that information of who or were items disposed of? It doesn't matter who the offender is, that if he is felt, he's going to dispose of items. So that's a non. But now if he disposed of it and he was the one that disposed of it, and he's passed the polygraphs and he says, this is the bridge and I throw them off and that's where you're going to find it. And if you find that evidence, then of course that is supporting evidence. We just don't know if that's the case. We don't know what the results of the search were. All right. FBI offered dinner and champagne and a hotel room for his testimony so he could have a date with his girlfriend. Is that something that law enforcement would do? It's so ridiculous that you have to say that is interesting. Why would you create such a tale? And is that an auditory clue that he heard that and he threw that out there? Because that's something that, would you make up such a lie? Could Kagan make up such a lie unless that actually happened? My law enforcement experience, I absolutely could see that law enforcement can lie to people during interviews. Is this a lie that law enforcement told him? Absolutely is possible. As silly and as ridiculous as that is, it's absolutely possible that some officer says, hey, tell us the truth, prove this, give us evidence, and this is what we'll do. It's so ridiculous, it's possible. I hate to admit it, but it is. And that's just strange. Because when you look at this and you hear these people talking about it and they say it's like from the movies, some officers will throw out some strange things out there sometimes during the interview. And they're allowed to do certain, like I said, you can lie to them because what does harm in a case that, hey, we'll buy you a bottle of champagne and you go have a date with your girlfriend. And then you have the offer of immunity. Was that true or not? Only law enforcement and the prosecutors that's involved would know that. Then Kagan says that the story is his medical reasons how come he took that they took custody of him and transported him. Who knows? It's just so interesting which way it goes and what does it mean. And that DNR is willing to speak to police. That really doesn't have to play into DNR's thought processes at all, because now that this is out there, law enforcement is going to look into it, regardless of what DNR wants to do. Now, does he have the right to remain silent? Yeah, but he's thrown himself under the bus, and he's facing a locomotive of that you put yourself in the path and you put yourself into a homicide investigation. And so we're going to look at it. And he may not like the route they go with it because he may not get offered the same deals because he is, when you serve time, whatever it is, drugs or otherwise, you're still on probation and parole. Very few people time out. And that when they leave jail, that they're through with parole and probation. And so will we learn more about DNR? It depends on what this journalist decides to do. And that's like I said, when we look back at and evaluate how the information that was available to law enforcement and that they kept close to their chest, and then certain creators released the transcripts, and now this journalist released this information that now from here on out it's public knowledge. And as the stories grow and as information grows, that the information is as just public knowledge now. So it takes away and it takes away the supportive evidence and the weight that you could give a simple statement. There's some powerful statements in there, and that would have been extremely powerful without what has happened in the last few months. Let's see where we are on questions here. Let's see. Charlie Daniels. Yeah, the information officer should be identified. If he's doing that, he's doing it on the clock. And if he's doing it on the clock, he should own up that I'm the one that says that this is information that, yes, we should release this information. And now that we've seen the harm that could come from this information, I don't think that he's going to step forward. True Crime with Sunshine. I like True Crime with Sunshine. You're talking about someone that has a great voice. She has a great voice, and she does some great coverage. I just not my law enforcement training. We did everything. We did it so structured, and we did presentations and everything. Just speaking off the top of the head, because even in court, when law enforcement talks and we're testifying to each one question that's very limited. It's not just a free that you get up there and say what you want in 30 minutes. You have to be asked a direct question, and you have to answer that question directly in as few words as the court will grant you, or as many words as the court will grant you, because they usually, those attorneys want yes and no questions answered yes and no. And trying to get the full explanation in there, you have to ask the court that I can answer that question with an explanation of the yes or no, but it takes more than just yes or no. And so there is certain leeway, but this freestyling as Christian and some of these creators have that ability. It's absolutely amazing. I want to grow up to be like them. Let's see here. Don't put me in timeout, Joe. Oh, man. Y'all are funny. Y'all are so funny. Oh, man. Let's see. We got any more questions in here? Louis Freeman. Never thought about what Steve just said. I've taken this about what we see in the fruits of the poison tree coming now from what these other journalists and creators have. Yes, they've taken what could have been great information and have made it common knowledge, and it's lost that supporting stance. Terrible. It angers me. Steve is the cop whisperer. You made my day. That is absolutely great. And Boozer, I want to thank you for what you did with my and how you support my channel and everything. It means a lot to me. And I appreciate you coming over here. And I believe you're over here with her. And I appreciate what you've done for all the channels. Thank you. And I'm sure I butchered your name. I don't know the proper pronunciation. I'm not even going to try on your last name. I'm sorry. Let's see. Steve, with everything being said, how do you think LA is responding to all this? Do you think they know what YouTube social media creators are saying? Absolutely, they know. And some of them are fighting about it. Some of them want information out there And does it harm the case against the YouTube and the social media? In some cases, it can. And we're beginning to see that now, that everybody, I was glad that that Murder Sheets kept focus on this case to a certain point. But now that I see the fruits of it, I'm beginning to have less and less enthusiasm that, the YouTubers out there with their theories and opinions is great, and we should. But it's when you release this information that only law enforcement should have and should only come from the platform of that law enforcement officer, then we have to say, okay, need to back off a little bit there. Lewis Freeman, how can I find what DNR told? What I did is I typed in Delphi, DNR, and Cellmate, and it popped up some of the second and third generation coverage. Don't know if that helped you or not, Lewis. Mr. Steve, if you're in charge of the investigation, what are the top things you would do, change, or look into? I would meet with every prosecutor in the area that would be involved in this crime and say that, okay, this is where we stand at right now. What information do we want to release, or what information do we release and tell the public this is where we're standing at currently on this case? This and because you have Ives that's come along and says that he believes other information should be released. You have John Douglas, who, world renowned and, a profiler, and how much knowledge does he have on the case? Don't know. But he says that he thinks that the window of opportunity of releasing information should have been in the past. But that's what I would do, is I would get with the prosecuting attorneys and say that, all right, we've got to handle the YouTube social media issues. It's beginning to hurt the case. And how do we fix it? What information do we release? And how do we tell the journalists that this is our source and this is the person that's going to release the information? And if you harm the case, then of course you may face the consequences. But that's what I would do. Otherwise, the boots on the ground, the officers are training, the lab technicians, the people doing the searches, the road officers, the investigators, they're going to do their jobs. Whatever the administration says, y'all go do this, you handle this, you follow these leads up, you do this, bring back the information. They're going to do their jobs. They're going to work hard and hopefully not harm the case or make many mistakes. It happens. We do. But I would get all the powers that be that would ever be involved in prosecution and say, we've got to let the public know where we're at, because as long as you leave the public out of the loop, you see where we're at. And it's just a madhouse. All right. Michelle says Derek or Flannel or RL would have seen him, at least one of them. Yeah, and that's, you would think so, but no one saw the girls either. Now it's a mystery, and when I get up there, I hope to answer some of this and look at this, and hopefully not that I'll have. Do I think my mere presence? No, but to satisfy my curiosity and see what were the initial points, what were the windows of opportunity, how could you observe these victims, how could you trap these victims, how could you escort them, how could you get them to the locations. It just beats at me, my curiosity to see that, because that's part of what, in CSI you do. You go and you evaluate and you weigh the information and see how these criminals act and understand that was it a chance encounter or was it something that was pre-planned, and who did the planning and how was it executed. And I'm just so curious, and I can't wait to look at some of this information. All right. Yeah. True crime. Who's Googling that? Well, yes, absolutely. Who would Google that? And a good point, Lewis, that he might have looked it up for who did it. Yeah, yeah. You know, if someone else is standing in the room says, "Oh my goodness, how long does?" And that's a good point. Um, Lewis, definitely another possibility there. Or is he minimizing his participation? There's a lot of times in those transcripts that you can see that he distanced himself from those devices. No, that wasn't me. Oh no, 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 no. You know, sure I had 7 devices, but every time someone had my password, and over the years they all searched for the same thing, um, and it was different people. We weigh that for what it is. Let's see. On the voices, I'm tone deaf. I couldn't tell you if it was him or TK. I couldn't tell you any of them. Lisa, and you let this guy out, and now I have to go to a hotel with him. Hmm. Yes. And it's amazing that the more notorious some of these killers and psychopaths are, that there's certain individuals that seek out that attention and will marry them and everything else. I'm sure there's a term for that. I've got to ask some of my support personnel that help me understand psychology, that I'll ask them that. Uh, 5 women right to him. Let's see here. I made Michelle smile. That's what I wanted to do. She understands a lot of this crime scene stuff. She is another person that knows exactly from what I speak. Hot whisper. Let's see. Trying to keep up with these questions. I just don't see how that when you watch Kristen do this show and she's talking and then she's answering it, because I'm in chat and I'm just sitting there drinking my coffee, watching her do this magical show, and she keeps up with the questions and everybody and says, "Hey, how you doing?" Absolutely amazing. What a brilliant woman. What a brilliant woman. The temperature range during the time frame, I don't know what it was, but I know that the day was pretty, but nights would have been cool just as soon as the sun went down. Okay, here's somebody 43 and 35 overnight. And I appreciate y'all's interest in me going up there and seeing this, and that bridge. I saw where they say it's so intimidating, and it is intimidating. Heights have never bothered me, but then again, I've never walked across a dilapidated bridge either. So hopefully, Mrs. Steve will get some good pictures that I fall through the bridge. Michelle, I also, and I've looked forward. We've got to get in contact with each other and speak with each other, because you have a lot of information on this, and you understand that part of the country, and look forward to hearing from you. All right. So, I hope I've done her well tonight. And does anyone else have any more questions or anything that you think that I need to that we can discuss? And always, as always, before we close and everything, I'll answer as many questions as you have. I'm here as far as and as long as you need me to help support Kristen, because um, she has done so much, and she's always been a friend to me. She allowed me, and she asked me to come on her show. She did a great interview with me. Um, And she was very polite, very professional, and she's a very interesting individual. And I hate to see her that when she's feeling bad or her health issues that she doesn't need any more stresses on her than what she's facing now from having to with her sickness and having to be medicated and taking the medicines until she gets better. And as we move forward, I'm still going to be doing my show. I've got another show this Saturday, and then if she wants me back, I'll be here for Saturday night for whatever topic she has for it. But as we go forward, all of us should, have her in your thoughts and prayers, and support her any way you can. And that includes sharing her videos and watching her videos, and not just watching her videos, because she's monetized. Watch those ads. When the ads come on, that just go get your cup of coffee or go read a book. Turn the video on, let it go, let the ads play, because YouTube pays her on a different format that if you watch the ads versus if you just scan through them. So support her in any shape. If you don't have other ways of supporting her, watch her videos. Give her the thumbs up. All of that counts towards her. And that's what we have to do, support her in any shape, form, or fashion that you can. I always do. And I ask each of y'all to do that for her because there's so much more to YouTube than most people or most creators even talk about. But I appreciate everyone that's had all the kind words for her tonight and have been inquiring about her health because it concerns me. And if there's anything I can ever do for her, I will. And I'm here as long as she needs me. All right. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on a network being responsible for carrying out these acts? Do you think the possibility of that has led to delays? Law enforcement would have been running many parallel investigations. They wouldn't have just looked at the Anthony Shots account, and they didn't. We can see that early on that they had the information about the social media aspects of it, and then they went after Ron Logan, so they was running parallels there. How many other parallels? You had other theories about drugs being involved, and so would they have run and been receiving leads on those? Probably so. So when the leads come in, they would assign them, they would classify them going down this avenue in this area, and they would put investigators on that. And it creates certain competitions, but the investigators, we like competition. We want the rabbit that we're chasing to be the rabbit that done it. And so we want to run that rabbit to ground, and we'll do it as hard as we can. And because everyone wants to be the one that catches this psychopath that did this. And that's just the way law enforcement is. We go out, we protect society, and we hunt the predators. And it's quite rewarding when you catch that predator. But that's what we get paid to do. And that's what we get paid to look for and hunt for. And so it was always an honor for me. Mr. Steve, will you live stream from up there on your journey? We got to see what the signal is. And the people that are hosting us, they say that they have a good stream. We're going to be working. I've got 2 other code cases, possibly a third one that I've got to work. Depends if that third family is able to come back in time because they have other commitments, family commitments during that time period. But I've got 2 code cases that I absolutely have to work on. And I've got dedicated days for that. Those 2 cases, I'm going to meet with them, and I've got the hours on it. But I still got about 2.5 days and nights because there's a lot of things I need to do in that area at night because there's a lot of information and a lot of speculation and a lot of questions out there from my CSI world of what is the scene at night and what will it tell me about that location. So, there's 24 hours in a day. And so I'll work as much and as long as I can to get as much information to answer the questions I have. And I have a sheet of checklists all the way from communications, two-way radios. I've got everything that I want to check and test and see where it goes. So I can share with y'all and share with Kristen and share with anyone that needs the information because I'm trying to figure out what happened, as we all are. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Absolutely, Kristen is a beautiful human being. Thank you. All my love and everything goes to Kristen, but I appreciate y'all's support also. Let's see. Okay. Faxx. Good to see you here, sir. I hope that she's in good hands. And I applaud you, sir. I wish I had worked for you. You seem like a great chief. I do have one question from you at some point. Here in Georgia, the highest rank that you achieve is how we always addressed you. Is that the same out there in the West? That should I address you as Top Faxx, or whenever we do meet, which I hope we meet at some point, do I address you as chief? That's just law enforcement and how we address that everyone spoke to in their highest office that they held. And but appreciate it, and I'm going to be looking up that information that you asked me or you sent me, and I appreciate that, sir. And if you have anything else, we've still got another 7 or 8 days before we, a week from Saturday, before we got 9 days before we head out. And but if anything does occur to you, you have my contact, so just let me know, and I'll be glad to handle anything on site for you I can. Let's see here. Let's see. I'm not as good, like I said, everybody coming in here late. See how I'm a little bit slower at this than she is. Unsolved crimes, yes, it would be an honor to work with KAK Faxx. Absolutely honor. Somebody says, "Don't walk the bridge." Corey Mama says, "Don't walk the bridge." I'll have to see. It depends on how I get access to it, and I don't know. That bridge is hardy. It's been there. It ain't but 90 or 100 or something years old. Let's see. Let's see. Michelle says that she walked it. I'm going through the Midwest. There are certain security issues on a couple of the cases I'm not allowed to, and I don't want to put the families at risk. And for their sake of that, I'll be on the cold cases stuff. On the Delphi thing, of course, doesn't matter. It's just me. And so I don't really worry about those issues. But for the other cases, it's still left up to those families if they wish to release any information of the work I'm doing. I know at least one family does. The other family, they've indicated also. But until we get up there and I do the work and look at it, and if I can get access to one of the crime scenes, then of course, we just don't want to tell people that this is what's about to happen. And so it's just part of it. And for their benefit, I won't be able to release that information until after we leave. The Delphi, of course, is no real big deal for me. Molly says she'd have to crawl. Absolutely. It would be a great panel. Any panel that KAK Faxx is on and Kristen's on, you got to show. You got to show. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yes, it's always, every time I met him, I retired lieutenants. It was lieutenants and captain or major or chief or sheriff. It's always the highest order that or highest office they held. Okay, Perry. Okay, thank you, sir. That's an honor. All right, I've had everything out there. Let's see here. Never saw it. Said he would walk it. We wouldn't let his kids. It's probably wise advice. Now, Mrs. Steve will not be on the bridge. She doesn't even like to drive across the bridge, so she won't be on the bridge. I can tell you that. But she may be flying the drone. We got a drone, and she's been practicing the drone, and so far she hadn't crashed it. So I have great confidence in that ability. Hopefully, she won't buzz me with a drone while I'm on the bridge. All righty, let me send. Everybody, if you had seen some of the things I did when I was rappelling, that if I didn't get injured then, it's very unlikely I'm going to get injured. And so let me send Kristen the text I said I'll be sending her so that she knows that we're winding down. Any last questions? I'll be glad to answer. And I look forward to coming on whenever Kristen decides that she needs me. And like I said, y'all support her in any shape, form, fashion through your prayers, your thoughts, whatever you can. And we owe her for, I'll never be able to repay her for her kindness and intellectual conversations and watching her operate and break down, because she's opened my eyes so many times just from her perspective. Absolutely brilliant. Let's see here. I don't know if she's going to pop in here on her own or if she's just going, if I just disappear, it's because she's wiped me off. Or if she's going to come and make an appearance and close us down. I don't know. But let's see here. There's why Kristen. Come on. Let's see here. As we look at Delphi, if any of you have any questions or you have something that you want me to look at when I'm ever in the area out there in Delphi or Kokomo or in that area, send it to me, steve@truecrimeweb.com, and I'll be glad to see if I have, it may already be on the list, but if it's not, I'll look at it and put it on the list. And I have certain things that I have put that if I only have 24 hours to work on it, then I'm going to work those 24 hours and work as far down that list as I can. But if any of you have some more questions or something that you want checked on while I'm out there, I don't know how much access I'm going to get either to the crime scene or to the other properties, but I've got people trying to get me access to certain areas, and I'll get as close to it regardless because I have the stream. I can get in the water regardless. I'm going to carry a life jacket with me. Hey, Chris.
Hey, Steve. Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for all being here tonight. I know that this is not what you're used to, but I so appreciate all of you. And mostly I appreciate Steve. I appreciate him for coming in here and treating my community like his own. It's absolutely wonderful. And I can't say enough about him. I know you guys have listened to him tonight, and he has so much information to share with us. Please make sure that if you guys can donate to him, that you do, because he is getting ready to go on some really important work for our missing children. And he leaves next weekend, the 15th, I believe. And we just need to really show him our love and support as well.
That's kind of you, not necessary, but I most certainly thank you for that.
You're so welcome. You are so welcome. And thank you guys for showing up for all of us tonight, because it really means a lot. You guys are very special to me. I hope you all know that. We've grown this channel together. I'm not leaving. I'm just recuperating, and I just need some rest. So, anyway, you guys, I'm going to say goodnight. I think Steve's going to say goodnight, and we will see you guys all on Saturday. Please be safe out there, and please treat everyone with kindness. It doesn't take much to be kind.
Absolutely. Night, night.
Good night, everyone.